Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're so glad that you came today. As you know, Eve is not here. She's in Morocco. We've been getting pictures and updates, and it looks like they're having an amazing time. But just because she's gone doesn't mean we can't be learning and social and here and together. And we have an amazing guest speaker today, a Momentum alum, Dr. Sofia. I'm just going to tell you her lesson. And wife was very kind. And my favorite title that I have. So let's welcome Dr.
Blushing, like be very red here today. Thank you so much, Julie. That was a very kind introduction. And I don't know how many teachers we have out here, but I seriously feel like I'm a teacher on the first day of Zoom school. Okay, like I've never done this before, so I'm like, okay, what's the angle here? Is this a little crazy? So hi, I hope you guys can hear me and see me. So first of all, I just want to say that I'm very honored and humbled to be here today, and especially to be filling in for Eve, who, as you know, is quite a powerhouse and very comfortable speaking in front of people. So to have to fill in today is a little bit intimidating, but it's all good. I'm going to do it. So I'm really grateful that she asked me, and that Julie and the rest of the L'Chaim team asked me to come here today. So hopefully we have a little fun. So why this topic? Okay, so today, basically, I was given free reign. Okay, I really wasn't told what to talk about. And they said, just pick a topic, talk about whatever you want. So for 90 minutes. So I decided to talk about how to feel better. Okay, and the reason that I chose that is because pretty much wherever I look around. So when I'm looking at my patients in front of me, my colleagues at work, my clients, my coaching clients, and even my family and friends, there is a lot of angst. There's a lot of unhappiness, dissatisfaction. And I think that's really been the case, especially the last several years. I felt that kind of rising. And so I think that if given the choice, most of us would choose to feel better. So I think it's a really great topic, and one that obviously has some interest and brought some people here today. And it's a particular favorite topic of mine. It's one that I really enjoy coaching on. And so I wanted to talk about it today. And one of the things that I have learned just in the last several years on my Jewish journey, and learning from all the wonderful people here at L'Chaim Center and from Eve, is that as Jews, we are actually obligated to feel joy, the simcha, joy. It's not just something that's nice to be happy, nice to feel joyful. We are actually meant to be joyful. We are meant to be happy, right? It's something that, as Eve always says, joy is really our baseline. Okay? Imagine that, like that's supposed to be our baseline, right? Sometimes it's turned up, sometimes it's turned down, but our baseline is supposed to be joy. But it doesn't always feel that way, right? It's I think for most of us, most people are not walking around this world feeling joyful a lot of the time, right? And if you think about it, why is that? It kind of doesn't make sense. You look at the time we are in history, we have more conveniences than we've ever had before, right? We have less physical labor required than we've ever had before. We have the most incredible technology. We literally have, the whole world here at our fingertips. And yet, most of us are really not feeling that joyful a lot of the time. So one of my goals here today, my main goal, is really to help kind of raise our collective joy back towards baseline. Okay, so that's what I'm hoping to do today. And I don't know how many of you guys actually saw the title of the talk, but it's called How to Use Your Amazing Brain to Feel Better. Okay, so I know I'm biased because I'm a neurologist, but I think that I believe, 100% believe that the most powerful tool in the world is your brain. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to take that tool, we want to wield its power to make it more effective, more efficient, and more impactful. And so what I'm hoping today is that you guys come away with understanding that the more you take advantage of the power of your brain, the more control you'll have over your emotions and over the experience of your life. Everything okay? You guys hear me? Okay, so I'm going to do that by teaching you guys 3 tools that hopefully you can start using right away. And I call these tools Reveal, Feel, and Take the Wheel. Okay, I got to make them rhyme so that you guys can remember them, right? Part of using our brain. All right, so let's begin. Okay, so the first tool that I want to talk about is reveal. And what we're revealing is we're going to reveal what is the true problem. What is our true problem that we have? Why aren't we feeling good? Okay. And what we want to do is we want to reveal this honestly for ourselves. Okay. And so the true problems, most of us, what we do is we attribute our problems to something that's outside of ourselves. Okay. So we think that there's something going on in the world and that's what's causing our problems. So maybe it's our job. Okay, so maybe we don't have a position that we want, or maybe we're not making money that we want to make, or maybe there's a mean boss at work or a colleague that we can't stand or something like that, right? So we think that's the problem. Not here, not here. Not Julie. Right. Right? Okay. Okay, or maybe our husbands are the problem. Anyone ever thought your husband was a problem? Okay, not me. So maybe our husbands aren't attentive enough, or maybe they do things or say things that push our buttons. Okay, or maybe it's our kids. That's why we feel the way we do. How many of you guys have ever thought it was your kids that made you? Oh, it's been a minute. Okay, for sure. Yeah, thank you. Okay, right? Yeah, for sure. Okay, I definitely thought I'm feeling a certain way because of my children. And right, but all of those things, those are just lies that we tell ourselves, right? Because the truth is that nothing outside of us can make us feel anything until we have a thought about it. Okay, so just think about that first. Nothing can make us feel anything until we actually have a thought there. So there's nothing anybody can say, there's nothing anybody can do that makes us feel anything until we have a thought about it. And I just want to give you an example of this weekend. So I was on call in the hospital this whole past week and weekend, and I was called to see a patient in the ICU, the intensive care unit, with a massive stroke. First day I came to see that patient, I think it was on Saturday, and the patient was unconscious. They had had a massive stroke. I could see the stroke on the scan. They had no concept that they had a stroke. They weren't awake. So they weren't having any thoughts. So they had no feeling about it. Okay, they weren't upset about the fact that they had a stroke. They weren't, devastated. They weren't frustrated, nothing. Then Sunday I came to see them. Same patient, same stroke, nothing had changed. And yet now the patient was totally awake, very frustrated, very angry, very upset that they could not move half their body. Okay. Now they had thoughts, lots of thoughts. It wasn't the stroke that caused them to feel anything, right? It was the fact that they were now conscious and were thinking. So without thoughts, we have absolutely no feelings. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay. Now we have lots of thoughts. Do you guys know how many thoughts we have a day? Anyone have any idea how many thoughts we have? Really? Well, I'm a teacher, maybe. Keep going, higher. Close. Who said 50,000? Higher. It's 70,000 thoughts a day. Yeah, they used to say 60,000, but the latest research shows we actually have 70,000 thoughts every single day. Okay. Yeah, this is why you can't sleep, Julie. Okay. 70,000 thoughts a day. Okay, so these thoughts,
About that, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that like now, or is it just, or is that the brain only have that? That's how many thoughts the brain.
that's how many thoughts our brain produces every single day when we're conscious. Okay. So imagine that 70,000 thoughts, and these thoughts strung together create stories, right? These are the stories of our life. This is the story that we create. We put these thoughts together and we create stories. Now, some of these stories are really good stories, and some of these stories are not so good stories, right? I think there was a psychologist, Dan McAdams, or someone who talks about the like interpretive stories. I don't know, maybe some of the psychologists in the room know about this, but sometimes we create redemptive stories where we're the hero, right? Sometimes we create these, I think they're called contamination stories, where we're the victim, right? But we string together thoughts, and these thoughts create stories, and we believe these stories. These are the stories that we run our life with, okay? So one of the things that well, first of all, let me back up. So how do we read these stories, right? We've got all of our senses, right? We've got our vision, our hearing, smell, taste, touch. We use all these senses, and all that input has to go in through our brain. Everything goes in through our brain, and then we produce these thoughts and we create these stories. These stories are our interpretation of the world around us, okay? So this is what we do to ourselves. We create all these stories, and what we want to do, right? The first thing that we want to do when we want to reveal the truth to ourselves, because that's this first tool that we're doing is revealing, is we want to separate out what are the facts and what are the stories. So if all you take away from this today is separating out the facts from the stories, that already is going to be a huge step in understanding why you feel the way you do, and gives you some power in changing that. Okay, so in order to separate facts from stories, we have to be really honest with ourselves and look to see what is happening, what's our thought about it, and what's just the circumstance. A fact is just a circumstance. It's a neutral circumstance. It doesn't have any feeling or emotion to it until we attach a thought to it. Okay, so one of the ways that I'm going to have you guys do a little exercise. Does everyone have paper? Do we have paper and pens for everyone? No, just like regular paper and pens. So, do you have any? Okay. So, I mean, what we could do is
Right.
a little exercise to help you guys kind of get some of those thoughts out. Now, you don't have to write them down, even if we don't have paper, it's fine. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. And what I want you guys to do is just to think about this. Think about some of the things that I'm going to ask you about. And these are really just thought binders. Okay, so we're going to kind of just get this out. If you can get it out on paper, that's great. If not, you can just think about this, about some of the answers. Now, one of the important things to keep in mind when you are starting to discover what your own thoughts are is to be really kind and compassionate with yourself. We want to be curious, okay? We don't want to judge our thoughts. Because one of the things our brain does is our brain is going to, as I said, 70,000 thoughts a day. It's going to offer us thoughts, and those thoughts are not always going to be very, okay. A lot of the thoughts that our brain offers us are kind of yucky thoughts. They're not really nice to see in front of you when you start to realize them. But they're just thoughts, okay? We don't have to judge them. We don't have to beat ourselves up for them. They just are what they are. So we just want to stay really curious and compassionate with ourselves and also with anybody else, if anyone actually shares some of those thoughts, okay? So when everyone's ready, we'll pass it around some paper. And at home, you guys can do this as well. Julie. And I think there's some pens. Feel, and take the wheel. We're just on the first tool right now on reveal. So what we want to do is reveal our true power.
What's our true problems?
Yeah, we're gonna see what our true problems are. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna read the questions and I'm gonna give you guys just a couple minutes to jot some things down. And it really, like I said, you could just think about this in your head, but it really is a powerful exercise to write this stuff down. Because as soon as you write something down, what we're trying to do is we're trying to separate facts from story here. Just the process of writing something on paper already is separated. It's outside of you, right? Because we think our stories are us. We believe them so much. We're so entrenched with them. So just by the idea of putting them on paper is already creating a separation. Okay. So I'm going to read these to you now. There's a couple questions here. And by the way, we don't feel that anyone's going to read your papers and you only have to share what you want to share. So these are private. Okay. So what are you worried about? What's stressing you out? What do you wish would be different? What just isn't right or isn't working? What are you struggling with? I'm going to give you a few minutes just to jot some things down. That done. Yeah, I can absolutely repeat them. What are you worried about? What's stressing you out? You can do more of this at home. Okay, we can meet after. Okay. What do you wish would be different? What just isn't right or isn't working? What are you struggling with? Have a few things that came to mind? All right. Now, can I have, I don't know if we have any brave volunteers who are willing to share some of the stuff that came up during this. Now, it doesn't have to be your deepest, darkest worries or anything like that. And I'm sure that whatever you guys wrote down, there's someone else in the room who is struggling with the same thing as you.
My
Okay. Do you want to tell me more about that? Okay.
Learning you can't make a 50-year-old child go to therapy without feeling it. And are the parents.
Tell me a little bit more like what's hard about that.
Realizing and now being able to help them, you know, and learning how to cope, right? Like, I have to be able to get, and until he's able to want to get that help.
Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds really challenging, but okay. So what we're gonna do now with what you just told me is I want to separate out, if you're okay with us talking about it. Okay, thank you for volunteering. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's not an easy thing to share. So did everyone hear what she said? Okay, so I want you guys, I'm gonna write some things out. Can someone kind of tell me some of the stuff that Stephanie, thank you, what Stephanie said. So what are some of the things that Stephanie said that she's struggling with? Okay, so it's mental health. Okay. So you said he does not have a diagnosis. Okay, so you said he has anxiety. Okay. So I don't know how many you guys can see this here. Okay.
Reality is so many people now have anxiety.
Okay, so is that well, first of all, let me define circumstances or facts and stories. We also call them circumstances and thoughts. Okay, so a circumstance is a fact in the world. Okay, it's totally neutral. Everybody in the world can agree on it, can be proven in a court of law. Okay, that's a circumstance. A thought is just a sentence we have about that circumstance. Okay, everyone with me? Son has anxiety. Is that a circumstance or is that a thought? What do you guys think? Okay, was he diagnosed?
No.
Right, she said he's not diagnosed.
I also know her and yeah, but
I'm not saying that she might be 100% right. And she might take him somewhere and he might be diagnosed, but right now, it's a thought. Okay, because we don't actually know if there is a diagnosis of anxiety that you can find the DSM-4, right? There's probably an updated DSM. It doesn't, I'm not arguing that he's anxious or not anxious. I'm saying, is it a circumstance or is it a thought? Right now, if we don't have something that's a diagnosis, we will put as a circumstance, okay? But son has, do you think everyone in the world who knows her son, everybody would agree? There's probably just, a lot of people might agree. Like there might be 99% of people who would agree, but we might bring him somewhere and there might be people who might not agree. He might not agree. Possible, right? I know this is hard because, and you guys can argue with me. I'm open. You can argue with me. But you agree it's a circumstance or a thought?
I'm sorry.
Okay. This can get kind of hard because a lot of us are very tied to our thoughts. We think they are facts. This is part of the problem. We believe our thoughts so much that we want to argue for the fact that they're actually circumstances. But they're not. Now, if she told me that he has a diagnosis of anxiety, I would. That would have been a circumstance. Right. Right. A thought would be what you're thinking about that diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, this is tricky stuff, but it's life changing. Yeah. Well, we're gonna get what you gave us a paragraph. Thank you. You gave us a paragraph. Now we have to remember what you gave us. I'm gonna have to ask you to repeat some of this. So what else did she say? What did you? Okay. Sorry, my right. Gotten really. Circumstance or thought? Yeah. Okay, what else did she say?
He doesn't have the strategy.
He doesn't have strategy.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, here? Yeah. A sentence in your brain about a circumstance. You guys are such good listeners. Circumstance fun. You
That's true. Which one? Seeking help. Somewhere.
Okay, the fact that we're not agreeing tells us it's a thought. Okay. The fact that we are not agreeing, we have a dissenter in the crowd, it's a thought. Okay. He is 15. All right, ding, 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 ding. We got one. All right, what else? He's okay. I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Right. You are a troublemaker. All right. What else did she say? Did she say he's tall?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so she gave us. So Stephanie was super brave, gave us something that she's struggling with. And what do we see? She has a son who's 15. That is the only fact I heard. Right? What do you guys think? Anyone want to argue that?
What if she said like a certain circle, the country that has?
Yeah, words. If somebody said words, that's a circus. That's a great question. My son said this. The text said, someone texted me this. Someone sent me an email. Here, email. We can prove it in court of law. The email said this. Circumstance.
Can I take a, like, when I'm trying to separate?
Right. Right.
To be able to like see the thing.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Okay.
What do you guys think about this? Is it like surprising to anyone? This is our whole life. This is what we do. Right. And how many of you? Lots of thoughts. Lots of thoughts. It's one of these are 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 6 of her 70,000. Right?
That's why.
It's not a thought that it's so big.
Right. When I heard her, I mean, we all probably can have a lot of compassion for what she's saying. Some of us might be going through the exact same things with our kids. We feel it, right? Like it feels so real. And I'm not saying it's not real, but they're thoughts. We want to just recognize it for what it is. That's what revealing is. Revealing our problems is that we live our lives right here between our heads. Okay. It's all a story. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't be telling the story, but we have to be honest with ourselves and tell ourselves that this really is a story and we do have a choice here. Okay. So the only circumstance that we heard here is that he's tall. So I'm sorry. I'm reading that one, but that he's 15, but that she has a son and he's 15. So one of the things that I like to do when you do this, so you can do this with anything in your life. The problem you have, I do separate what are the facts and what are the thoughts. What's the facts? What's the story? And what I like to do for you, sir, by any chance, Julie, what do we have any razor tissue? Okay, so one of the things that I like to do and that I teach is something that some of you have heard about, came up, I don't know, one of our other Women, Wine and Wisdom, and then with Allie when she did a retreat a while back. So there's something called a model. Okay, it's a coaching model. So CTFAR. Okay, so C stands for circumstances. T is our thoughts. F is feelings. Okay. So we can take any of our thoughts and put them into this model. Okay, so this was a model that I learned in school for Castile. Okay, so CTFAR. So circumstances we already talked about, those are just neutral facts. Thoughts are the sentences we have, our interpretation of that circumstance. That thought creates a feeling, and we like to just do one feeling. We have lots of feelings, okay, because we have lots of thoughts. But we're taking this and we're kind of like putting a microscope on it. We're just looking at one of them. One thought, just one sentence, one fragment. Feeling that feeling that generates, it drives our actions. Okay, and actions are all the things that we do, all the things we say, and all the things we don't do, okay, and don't say. Those actions create our result. Now, when we do this model, it's always about us. It's not about somebody else. Somebody else has their own model. We can only look at our own model. And what I love about this, what this is it reveals to us what our problem is and the result, not our problem, but it reveals what our thoughts are, which really most problems in the world are thought problems. Okay. No, that doesn't always sit well with everybody. If you think about that, just kind of saw an example of that, right? So what this does is it can reveal to us what our thoughts are creating in our life, what result we have because of that thought. And I'm not saying you have to change that thought. That's totally up to you. You can decide to keep it if you want. A lot of times we do want to keep it, but we should at least see what it's creating, especially if it's creating something that we don't want. So you can take any of the thoughts. I just have the first one up there. Son has anxiety. Okay, so what is the circumstance? We already said the circumstance is son 15. That's all we got. All right, so what is the thought about it? Stephanie, when you think the thought that your son, how do you feel? You guys think about it for yourself. If you thought that your child, if you thought your child had anxiety, how would you feel? So now this is what happens a lot of times is you try to do a model and lots of feelings come up. Because we're human and we have a lot of different feelings. I don't know how many feelings we have. Only imagine. For me, it's a lot. If you had to pick one, you're going to have a lot of feelings. But when you really, sometimes you just have to sit with that thought. Okay, my son has anxiety. Then just feel that in your body. What is sort of the main feeling? You're frustrated. What do you do? What else? I mean, anyone can answer this. If you are frustrated because you have a thought that someone you love has anxiety, what would you do? I mean, I know I'm picking on you because you're so brave and volunteer. Thank you. And you seem like a good sport. Right. Okay, well, but let's stick with what are you doing? I mean, does that fit, Stephanie? Would you shut down when you're frustrated? What else? Plan.
Plan around.
From frustration, do you think you're planning? Most people, when they're frustrated, they're probably not planning. You're probably planning from a different feeling. Some people might plan from frustration, but we're not going to think of like all the things we would do in a situation that somebody might have anxiety. We're thinking about in this microcosm, in this moment, when we are feeling frustrated, what are we doing? I mean, maybe you're planning. You're not planning. Okay. She doesn't do, okay, so what do you do? Actually, let's stick with Sofia. What do you do?
So, I mean, so this is, if I would, like, I can. Of what my true
Okay.
circumstance.
Okay. Let's stick with this one. What are you not doing?
Yeah.
When you're frustrated, what are you not doing?
Not.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not thinking of it. I wanna like.
Right. Okay. Okay, fine. This is good. This is good. I mean, we can go on, right? But just so you have a son, he's 15, your thought about him is that he has anxiety. Now, we could have put more stuff in the circumstance for sure. We could have, maybe he said something, maybe he did something, maybe he wrote something, right? We could put a lot of things in there, but for now, I'm leaving this very general and I'm just saying based on the paragraph that she gave us, okay? From that feeling of frustration, yelling, crying, shutting down, not thinking clearly. What result is that creating for you when you're doing all those things?
Vicious cycle.
Right. Your own, right? You're increasing your own anxiety, right? This happened. And here's the thing about this model. That result always comes back to the T, to the thought. You can do this over and over and over again. I've done hundreds of models. Always comes back to the thought. To the thought. Your result is always a reflection of the thought. It either increases evidence of the thought or you're doing the same thing as the thought. So for example, like, let's say whenever somebody else is in your thought line, the result is always that you do the same thing that you think that they're doing. Always. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. That's just probably. All I know is that when you do this model, you will see that your result ends up being a reflection of the thought.
First, or being frustrated. Anybody else but her?
Yeah, so this model that we're doing is just on her own thought and her own result, what it does for her. I'm not saying what it does for her son, what her husband, her family, whatever, none of that. Yeah, and I'm not showing you this to say that it's good, bad. We're not judging it. Remember, we're staying curious. We're not judging our thinking. We just want to see what our thinking's creating. That's it. This is a reveal model. Okay, we're just revealing what's happening in our life. Okay, so all this does is show us that when we have the thought that son has anxiety, we end up doing all these things and increasing our own anxiety. Okay, now we may choose to keep doing that. That's okay, right? But we just want to know what the truth is. What? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Enmesh. I don't know if you want to tell more about what enmesh. Well, we don't have to, that's fine. But I'm not saying anxiety is just a thought. Anxiety is a feeling. So anxiety can be put here. Anxiety is definitely a feeling. In this particular model, I put it here because that was her thought. So anxiety is 100% a feeling. Sometimes things can go in more than one place in this model. But I just did a model on this particular thought. Okay. So I wanted to show you this because just this tool alone, just by separating out what are the facts and what is the story, what's the circumstance, and what's the thought, it can be so revealing. It can show us like, oh, okay, this is actually a thought I'm having. And then if we put it in a model, we can see this is actually what we're creating. Okay, it's good to know. Everyone kind of got it, right? All right, so we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the next. Okay, so tool number 2 is feel. Okay, and feel, what I mean by feel is to feel on purpose. Okay, so I want you guys to throw out for me some things. If you had anything in the world you want, name some things that you want. Like I'll be like Oprah. You can have this, and you can have that, and you can get a car, and you can get a car. Tell me, name some things that like you could have anything in the world. What would you want? All right. Anybody else? Anyone? I'd like a trip to Hawaii. I was just gonna say, I'd like a trip to Hawaii. Okay, travel. Kid-free vacation, travel. Okay, so, okay, awesome. So the only reason of us want anything is because of how we think we'll feel when we get it. Think about that. That took me like a minute to wrap my mind around. The only reason we want anything is because of how we think we're going to feel when we have it. So that might be losing a certain amount of weight, right? That might be living in a particular house, buying a house or a car or an outfit, or it might be taking a vacation somewhere. The only reason we want those things is because of how we will feel. Now, again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying how we think we'll feel when we get it. Okay. And somebody mentioned, yes. Yeah, someone, yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. Why do you want to be healthy? Right. Yeah. I want to be healthy too. I'm not arguing with wanting those things, but we want those things because of how we think we'll feel when we have it. Right? Right. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Right. Right. Definitely. Yes. Good question. Thank you for the transition. I was just, yes. So I was just going to say, most of us want our kids to be happy, right? And we do. We actually want them to be happy, but also so that we could be happy. Right? Not true? Right? You guys ever heard the saying, you're only as happy as your least happy kid? Right? It's hard to be happy. Kid's not happy. We can do it, but most of us don't think that we can. Okay. So the emotional secret to the universe is that your thoughts create your feelings, right? We kind of just showed that. That's what this model shows. Your thoughts create your feelings, your circumstances, which is what we usually think. Okay, so remember that model. Remember feelings. Where do feelings come? Right in the middle, right? So they're created by our thoughts, and they drive all of our actions, and they create all of our results. So our thoughts are what create our feelings. So we want to keep that in mind. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. We're wired for that. That's why our human brains, right? We have a primitive brain and we have a very evolved brain. Our primitive brain is our brain of survival. And our primitive brain has 3 major motivations, right? It's to seek pleasure, to avoid pain, and to be efficient. We want to expend as little energy as possible. That totally worked well for us back in the cave, right? But we're not in the cave anymore, and it doesn't always work so well for us anymore. But it's totally normal that we have those motivations. They're all there for us, okay? So if all we really want feel a certain way, and let me just kind of back up. I just want to define what a feeling is. I don't think I defined that when I introduced this kind of model. We talked about what circumstances are. We talked about what thoughts are. The definition of a feeling is a vibration in your body. So think about that. All a feeling is a vibration in your body. So you want all these things, health, trip, whatever it is, because of how you think you're going to feel when you have it, the vibration that you're going to experience in your body when you have it. That's all it is. Feeling is just a vibration. Okay. So if all you really want is to feel a certain way, right, which is why we want all these external things, or why we want to manipulate our circumstances, right, so that we could feel something. All we want is to feel something a certain way, and our feelings actually come from our thinking, right? Then you can actually decide to deliberately feel whatever you actually want. And so if all you really want is to feel a certain way, which is why you want all these external things, or you want to manipulate your circumstances, right? Like change your circumstances so that you get to feel something, but your feelings come from your thinking, then you can actually choose. You can deliberately choose how you want to feel, right? By deliberately thinking what you want to think. And therefore you can create any emotion that you actually want. So, well, I'm not gonna, no, I'm totally not saying that. Well, no, it's a great question. It's a great question. Let me just continue on, and then I'll get back to that in just a second. So you can, let's say you want to decide how you want to feel. So you decide that there's a feeling that you want to have, okay? I'm not saying that we have to change what step we have. This was just an example to show how to use the model. But we're just talking about deciding on purpose how you want to feel. Okay, so you can decide, let's say there's a feeling that you want. You decide that feeling, kind of imagine it in your body. Okay, so you can feel it in your body. You can try to understand why you want that feeling, right? And then you can trace it backward. Right? So you can determine, what would I have to ask yourself? What would I have to think in order to feel the way that I actually want to? Now, in that circumstance, she may not want to feel it, right? This is only feelings that you actually want to have. She may decide that this is actually how she wants to feel. And again, because, and I'll get to that in a minute, but most of the time we don't want to feel good when somebody we love is in pain or hurting. So if she believes that her son is in pain or hurting, she probably doesn't want to feel good about that, right? She cannot feel good about it and still recognize that that feeling is still coming from her own thinking. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But isn't that feeling just that feeling for that moment, and or like a mood and her thoughts? Because if she's feeling frustrated all day,
Right.
right? You know, because
Yeah.
different emotions.
Totally. Right. Yeah. And of course, during the day, you're going to have lots of different
Mhm.
feelings, lots of different thoughts, lots of different feelings from those thoughts. But what I'm talking about now is if there's something that you actually want to create that you don't have right, a feeling that you actually want. Now, this is like going, of course, a lot of steps further than some of us necessarily want to be, but just kind of hear me out in the concept here. The concept is that, because I think this is something that's new to a lot of people, we don't think that we can actually create our feelings. We think that they just happen to us, that they fall upon us, right? Just like we fall in love, right? Which You know, even in the talks that we hear here, that's not it's really a choice, right? We can choose to love. And that's the point here. The point is that feelings don't just happen to us. They feel like they happen to us sometimes, but we can actually deliberately choose to feel certain things. Now, so we talked about deciding a feeling you want and tracing it backwards and asking yourself, what would I have to think in order to feel this way? Now, all that has to be true about the thought is that you believe it, right? Because this isn't just think happy thoughts. Because I know a lot of people say, oh, just think happy thoughts and you'll feel happy. That doesn't work if you don't believe the thought, right? You have to actually believe it. When you believe a thought, it creates an actual emotion. And that's real feeling. So you have to have a thought that you actually believe. So it's not just think happy thoughts. And then the other part, which you already brought up, is that I'm absolutely not suggesting that we want to feel happy all the time. We want to feel good about everything. Okay? Most of us don't. Most of us do not want to feel good when someone dies. Most of us do not want to feel good when someone we love is hurting or in pain. But that doesn't mean that we still can't own our feelings and understand where they're actually coming from. And there's a lot of power in that, in recognizing the source of those feelings. But the source is always your thinking. Again, it doesn't mean you have to change your thinking. And I'm not even suggesting you should. And one of the concepts I actually believe and teach is that life is 50-50. We have about 50% negative emotions and 50% positive emotions. I think it feels much more in one direction for some people because we feel bad about being bad. But we experience our life as much more than 50. Really not meant to have positive emotions all the time. That doesn't mean we shouldn't understand where they're coming from. Because if we do want to change them, that gives us so much power.
You know how you hear you know, that, I'm just curious, like what you would say about that. There's obviously, I'll always be agree. Is that just because of the or are they for the other or become maybe more things?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I mean, if you want to ask me my opinion, I think that I totally agree with that concept. I think some people are definitely born sunny side down, or right as Ruhi Koval talks about it, there are orchids and there are dandelions, right? The orchid like kids who are orchids, right? That you can put that little cube of ice in and it doesn't matter what you do, right? They're going to wither away. But then you've got the kids who are dandelions and it doesn't matter how they're raised, doesn't matter what kind of parents they have, and they just thrive, right? So, and there's people who are very positive and there's people who are maybe not so positive. I think regardless of who those people are, they still experience a life that's about 50 positive, 50 negative. And just because they're expressing positivity to the world doesn't mean inside they're feeling that, right? You could on the outside be a very positive person and you might talk to people and be super happy and sound great all the time and sound like you're so happy, but inside you might not be feeling that way. So just because you perceive them as a positive person doesn't mean they're experiencing that inside. They might be, but they might not. Right, right. And I'm not even saying that everything may not want to revamp how you think, right? I'm not saying even you should revamp how you think. It's just good to know, right? It's good to know where this is coming from. Okay. So one of the exercises I wanted, I brought here. It's double-sided. Awesome. Okay.
Would you start some of that over there? Yes.
So while this is, while we're passing this out. Okay, so I want you to imagine. I want you to imagine that you are at a.
I can email it to you ladies right now if you want.
Oh, you got So what are the topics that you have now? Like on a day? I do too. I want all this and I'm not really looking at the back. And then take this. And look at what are the top 3 feelings that you could choose to have? What would they be? Hungry. Pretty good list, right? Yeah. Look at all the different feelings. Well, you know, a lot of times we group feelings together, but one of the things when I do this exercise, when I do these models, like when I do them on myself, when I do them on clients, there's a huge difference in feelings that seem like they're very similar. They create actually very different results for you. So there's like sadness and there's like despair. There's like frustration and like there's like anger, annoyance, frustration. They all have different like vibrations in your body. Does anyone want to share what your the what? Oh, you don't have to read all the feelings. Those are just to give you some ideas of different feelings that are available to you. Okay. All right. So I will share mine from, I think I did this the first time, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And my top 3 feelings on a daily basis were anger, stress, and worry. Anyone else? Anyone else have anger, stress, or worry? Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm gonna read. I'm just gonna share what my says. Why do you think you have these feelings? So the questions for those who are on Zoom, the question is, what are on a daily basis? What are your top 3 most common feelings, and why do you think you have these feelings on a daily basis? And then, what would you like your top 3 feelings to be, and why? How would your results change if you changed your top 3 feelings? Would you keep any the same? Did anyone have the same feeling? No, you did? Yeah. Yeah, like the same from like your top 3 daily feelings are to what you actually would want them to be. No, any of them. Amazing. Yeah, wow. I mean, that's, yeah, I am too. Mine were very different. I would, yeah, no. Yeah, I was anger, stress, and worry to calm, grateful, and present. That was mine 2 years ago. Okay. Mine were calm, grateful, and present. All right, so again, this is just an exercise, just kind of showing you this. These are the, because a lot of times we're kind of going through our day, a lot of the same feelings over and over and over again. And look at the list I gave you. There's like a lot of options available here, right? You don't necessarily have to feel that all the time. Yes.
From your experience. Your first step. In negative.
Mhm.
Grateful every day.
Yeah. Like if someone asked you what your feelings were, you saying your default might be some of the negative ones? Yeah. Yeah, but you know what? It kind of goes back to our motivation, like the way our brains are wired, right? I think in general, we're wired to like, we notice that stuff. Protective sometimes, right? When we think about like some of the negative feelings we have, they serve a purpose. Like they try to protect us.
The normal response.
Well,
I think it probably is doing.
no,
Yeah. That's.
well, I'm not saying it should, I think from my understanding, what I've learned, just again, learning from Allie and Eve and all the people here, and just about what Judaism says about feelings, is that we're actually meant, like we're here on this earth to enjoy it, to have pleasure. There's different kinds of pleasure, but I think we are designed to have pleasure. I think we are meant to experience joy. Doesn't mean we're not meant to experience the other things. Okay. So, all right, let's move on. We don't have too much time left. So I want to move on to the last tool. And this one I call take the wheel. Okay, so this is where we start taking responsibility for our experience of our life, for our emotions, but without blame or shame. Okay, we don't want to ever blame ourselves, shame ourselves, judge ourselves negatively. Okay, so again, this model, if you think about this, right, we've got our circumstances, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and our results. Okay, so we not have control over the circumstances. These are our inputs, right? We have no control over that. We do have control over the rest of this model. These are our outputs. Okay, 4/5 of the model we have control over. That to me is super encouraging. I look at this as a model of empowerment. I think this gives us so much more power than we realize. When we realize that, yeah, we don't have control over our circumstances, but that's only 1/5 of the world, right? Because everything in the world can be put into one of these 5 things. So for me, that gives me a lot of comfort in some ways. And it makes me feel like there's a lot more power than I realized that I had. So one of the ways that we can start taking responsibility for our own experience is by questioning. Okay. So asking good questions. And by questioning, I mean acknowledging that the story that our brain is offering is not the only one. Okay? Just because we have a thought doesn't make it true. Okay? Even if it is true, we don't always have to choose to attach ourselves to it. We have 70,000 thoughts a day, and yet we attach ourselves, sometimes the same ones, over and over and over. You don't have to do that. It's optional. Okay? So we want to acknowledge that our story is not the only one. And we can also ask powerful questions that can help us let go of some of our default thinking. Okay? So one of the questions that I love to ask is, what else could be true? And you identify your story. What else could be true? Right? Our brains add color to everything, right? Different hues, this shade and that shade and this shade. There's lots of different shades, right? So which shade is your brain adding, and what other shade is here? And when you ask that question, what else could be true? It opens your brain up to other possibilities. Right? It starts to come up with other ideas of what are some other stories I could have. And there are lots of other stories. Your story isn't the only one, right? Okay. The other thing that we want to do when it comes to questions is we want to ask empowering questions rather than disempowering questions. Okay. When you ask a negative question, when you ask it of yourself, when you ask it of someone else, but particularly we're talking about asking ourselves. When we ask ourselves a negative question, we're going to get a negative thought as an answer. Yeah. So, for example, you might say, why can't I lose weight? What's wrong with me? Why don't they ever listen? Why is this so hard? Those are disempowering questions. Because when you ask yourself those questions or anything that's, along those lines, brain is going to come up with an answer and find lots of reasons. You can't lose weight, why it's so hard, why they're not listening, why this isn't working, why this relationship is so difficult. You ask a disempowering question, you're going to get a lot of negative answers. Versus, yes, exactly. I love that. Yeah. There's who here knows Hebrew. It's what was the question? It's like, for what? It's what? No, it's the question that's gosh, I'm blanking on it, but yeah. What'd you say? Yeah. What is it? It means like why? Why versus like for what? Instead of why did this happen? For what did this happen? Like I may be saying it wrong, but I think yeah. Why did this happen to me? Disempowering question. How did this happen for me? Empowering question. Right. So some other empowering questions like, how have I been successful at this? Right? How can I enjoy this process? How can I make it fun? How can this be easy? So we want to ask ourselves good questions, right? Everyone says, right, there's no such thing as a dumb question, right? There are dumb questions, but there are better questions than others. And so we want to try to ask ourselves better questions because then we're going to get better answers. And we want to use questions to help direct our brain where we want it to go. So think about your primitive brain. The way I like to look at it is it's like a toddler with a knife. Okay, it's just running around wild. That's what your brain's doing. You're just running wild. And we have to kind of take that knife away. You got to tame it. Or it's like a toddler at a grocery store. Like, I want that. I want that. I want that. I don't know how many of you guys have toddlers at home. I'm like long past that now, but you just want to take them and like direct them. No, we're going in this direction now. Like grab their hand, right? You want to do that to your brain too. You want to direct it in the place you want it to go. Because if you let it go on default, which is how most of us operate, it's always pretty, right? It ends up creating a lot of problems for us. So what we're doing here is we're trying to direct our brains in the way that we want it to go. Right? We want to create our experience by asking ourselves good questions. One of the things that we can do. Okay. Another thing that, I don't know. How many of you have ever told yourself, I don't know? I've told myself that. Once or twice. I don't know. I'm confused. I can't decide. Anytime you say those things to yourself, you end up blocking yourself from knowing, right? Because if you put I don't know in this model, where does that go? I don't know. Right. Most of the time we think it's just a fact. Like, no, I really don't know. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to figure this problem out. I don't know how to deal with this thing happening at home, my family. Don't know technology. I don't know whatever it is, right? It could be anything. I'm figuring it out. I'm learning. Or I do know, and you just, most of the time when you don't know something, you really do know. Or you allow yourself to just guess and give yourself permission to be wrong. Right? Can be, right? But sometimes when I tell myself I'm figuring it out, it doesn't feel so positive. Usually when I tell myself that, it doesn't feel positive, but I'll do it anyway. Like, I mean, this is kind of a silly example, but my whole life I thought of myself as like technologically dumb. Like I just no, like I mean, like I can't do technology. I mean, I've told myself that my whole life. Like something goes wrong with my computer, I'll call my husband. Like I have no idea what to do. I mean, I'm lucky I can do the epic thing at work. But then, like when I was starting my business, I wanted to create a website. I remember talking to Allie about this, and Allie's like, "Oh, just hire someone." I was like, "No, I don't want to. I want to figure this out because then if something goes wrong, I won't know what they're talking about." So I decided, okay, I have no idea about technology. And I did, and I figured it out, and it's terrible. I have a website that's terrible. I don't care. Figured it out. I'm so proud of it. So because I just said, you know what? I'm not going to tell myself I don't know. Because not. Well, it's a thought. You're right. Right. But I'm willing for it to be terrible because I wanted to not block myself and tell myself I don't know. Yeah, totally my story. And I know it's my story. 100%. So those are just sentences to like be aware of. Like, I don't know, I'm confused. Just get rid of them. They're not useful. They don't take you anywhere you want to go. At least they don't take me anywhere I want to go. All right, language. Language matters. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know how to do my kids' math either. But yeah, no. I don't. But right. But does I don't know stop you from helping your child? Right. Yes. I phone a friend. Right. Phone a friend. Call your friend who's smarter than you and let them explain it to you. I mean, you can tell I'm not saying you can never say, I'm not even, and that's it's more like telling them you don't know. I'm talking more about the things you say to yourself. Right. This is more like what you're telling yourself. I mean, I tell my kids I don't know all the time. I tell my husband still to this day thinks that I don't know how to unplug a toilet. I don't know. I say I don't know. I don't know. I lived by myself. I was like single for years before I'm married. You think I don't know how to unplug a toilet? I don't want to do it. I don't know. I do not know how to. I'm excellent at unplugging toilets. So if anyone ever tell me this, he's to this day he thinks I don't know how to do it. But I say I don't know all the time, but I don't tell myself. Okay. Say it to others. Don't say it to yourself if it's going to block you from doing it. Yeah. Right. Right. So you didn't just stop at I don't know. I don't know yet. I love yet. I don't know yet. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm figuring it out. Right, because you didn't just say I don't know and throw your hands up. You said I don't know, but I'm figuring it out. Right. I was willing for it to be terrible, just to like, and I was willing for it to be hard. I was willing for it to be like really painful, you know?
Well, it reminds me like in education, we have something.
And that's just that little word opens everything up. Like now you have possibility.
That's
right.
Like they won't ever get it.
Right. And there's just a couple other things with language. So again, this is something that I think we say all the time, we just are raised to say that I'm feeling this because this happened, right? I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling sad or we say to our children, you're feeling sad because you didn't get invited to the party, right? You're sad because you didn't get, like, I'm so sorry, you're so sad because you didn't get invited, or feeling left out because they didn't invite you, or whatever it is, right? We tend to say that we feel something because something happened. So just be cautious of the language. I'm feeling this because I'm thinking this. Something useful even to start teaching our kids when they're young, to stop attaching your feelings to the circumstances. It gives you more control, it gives you more power when you actually attach feelings to the thoughts. So just switching that language around can make a big difference. And then just in the interest of time here, so I have to versus I choose to, or I get to, exactly, right? To do anything, right? I remember there was a point, like, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or something, where I was making lunches for my kids every single day, 3 kids plus myself, lunches every day. And I was like doing it really resentfully. You know, I was like not happy making these lunches because I would tell them, like, you guys have to make lunch. They wouldn't make it. I'd get mad, but I'm sitting there making it, mad that I'm making it. And then it hit me like, I don't have to do anything. I actually want to do this. I'm choosing this because I know that left to their own devices, their lunch is not going to be something that I actually want them to eat, and maybe I'll choose to do that sometime. But I actually was choosing to make a lunch because I knew that it would have a protein and maybe a fruit and maybe, you know, whatever they'd have. But I stopped saying I have to. I mean, I'm not saying I don't ever say it, but like you catch yourself. You don't actually have to do anything. I mean, I was coaching a physician mom once she was a single mom, and she was really upset about the fact that like she had to work. She's like, I feel like I have to work and I just want to be home and be with my kid, and all they have and blah, blah, blah. Yet I have to go in. Patients are angry and this and that. And we kind of went there, like, do you really have to go to work? She's like, oh yeah, I have to go to work for sure. I have to go. Like, who's going to pay the bills? Like, I'm the only one. And I was like, well, you don't actually have to. Like, what would happen if you didn't go? She's like, oh, I'd get fired. Okay, so then what would happen? Well, I would end up, living at my mom's house or on the street, or I'd have to go on financial government assistance or whatever. Okay, what else? What else would happen? Like those things, like you could do that. You could choose to do that. You don't actually have to get up and go to work. You're choosing to do that because the alternative isn't something you want to do. So it's just using that language. And it was like, oh, that's right. I actually don't have to do anything. I don't actually have to take care of my kids. You're choosing to. Get to, right? So just that little shift. Okay. There are consequences, but people take consequences all the time. There are people who don't take care of their kids. There are people who have a job and don't show up. It is optional, right? So when you're doing it, you're actually choosing to do it. Okay, and finally it's shifting, right? So shifting from what you believe now to what you want to. And that's really the daily practice of all this. This is just every day choosing what you want to believe. And maybe you have this one big belief that you're not there yet, right? You believe something now, you want to believe something different. And it's the daily practice of making choices of what you're thinking and what you're believing that inches you closer and closer to where you're actually living into the belief that you want. What you want to believe. right? And that's the daily practice and there's a lot of ways to do that, but that's kind of the process. So this is just, so I'm just giving you a little bit. These are just a few tools, right? So just to kind of recap. Okay. So the first tool is reveal, right? So it's revealing the true problems. And that's where we separate our thoughts from the circumstances from the thoughts, or the facts from the story. Okay. And then we can even put it into a model if we want to try to really see what that's revealing in our life, what it's creating in our life, I should say, the result that we're getting from it. Then we have feel, that we actually can feel on purpose. We can choose what we want to feel because our thoughts are what create our feelings, not our circumstances. And then finally, taking the wheel, which is taking responsibility, is asking good questions, looking at the language that we choose, asking empowering versus disempowering questions, and then starting to shift our beliefs into what we actually. A lot of work. What are you thinking that's making you feel so tired? Okay. It sounds hard, but it's really, and I'm not saying it's not hard. I think this is like a daily practice for people who want, but it's pretty amazing what you could achieve and accomplish in really not that long of a time. This is like living intentionally, right? This is like deciding what you actually want. Now, this is not work that everyone, I think, wants to do, needs to do, should do, but for a lot of people, I think for most people, it's not only is it helpful, but you could actually create. I mean, I really believe that you can create anything you want to create. I mean, the possibilities really are up to you.
How you apply this like in daily life. I mean, in the moment that you're feeling frustrated, or like disconnect twice.
Yeah.
Figure out the
Yeah.
circumstances. Or
So yeah, no, it's a great question. So my daily practice, I don't do this every day, but I noticed when I stop doing it, I notice it right away. So my daily practice is I do something called a thought download. Okay. So I take like 5 minutes, and you can do it in the morning, you can do it in the evening before bed. And I dump my thoughts on paper. I do kind of what we like the beginning with Stephanie volunteered for us. And usually it's stuff comes out that I was like, oh, that's coming out now, huh? Like it's usually about something that happened that day. I just let it out. And then you start, again, it's separated from you so you can evaluate it much better. So you can see your thoughts sitting in front of you on paper, and immediately I can notice like, oh, which of these are thoughts? And 99% of them are thoughts. And then I can start to see, oh, okay. And sometimes I will do a model. I usually will pick one of those thoughts and I'll do a model and I'll see what it's creating for me. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. And even though I've done this so many times, it's always revealing. It's like, oh, yeah, that's why this happened. That's why I feel this way, or that's why this is what's happening in my life. And so part of it is I do it myself. I also, for me, coaching is like the most invaluable tool ever. I mean, it's something I discovered about 2 years ago, and I get coached every week. So I have a coach that I work with a coach every single week. It's like 20 to 40 minutes. And there are some weeks I don't do it. And again, I notice when I'm like in a place where I'm like not feeling as good, or I'm like having a lot more negative emotions, it's like, oh yeah, I haven't gotten coached in a few weeks, time to get coached again, or time to do a thought download. And for me, it doesn't take a lot of time. I mean, this is like 20-ish, like I said, 20 to 40 minutes of coaching that so I coach others, but almost every, I would say 99% of coaches I know, you're a coach, right? Or you do some kind of coaching? Okay, you mentioned coach. Most people who coach other people have a coach. Like I don't know any coach doesn't get coached, because you see the power of it. Like you see what it does for you and what it can create for you and how it helps you process things that happen. I mean, it's coaching is very different than therapy. And one of the things I don't want to minimize that it is extremely different than therapy. And a lot of people have both. They have therapists and they have coach. It has a different role, I think, for coaching, but some people definitely use both for different things. But for me, for this work, what you're talking about, this for me is where coaching. It helps. I use it more to like create the things that I want to create in my life. Your friends are in the pool with you. You can't do this with a friend, because who wants to talk to a friend and they tell you, well, that's your thought, right? Or point, that's your thought. No, if they tell you that someone wronged them, you want to be pissed at the person with them. That's what you want to do with your friend. You can't, I mean, some people do coach friends, but it's a very different experience. Oh, want to read one little thing. I came across this little parable the other day. It's really short. I don't know how many of you guys have heard of the tale of two wolves.
Oh, yeah.
You heard that? Okay. So I'm just gonna read it. Okay, so one evening, an old Cherokee told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. He said, "My son, the battle is between two wolves inside all of us. One is evil. It is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf wins?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." So to me, like some of these tools that I talked about and the things that I discussed today, hopefully it's just helping to feed the good. That's the way I kind of look at it. All right. Sorry, I went over.
Yeah.
Hi, Stephanie. Like you're still there, not sleeping.
I'm here.
Okay, good night, Stephanie. Do you need anything?
No, I'm
You're good?
good.
Okay,
It was
all
great.
right, she was great, huh?
Yeah, she's awesome. Was it crowded?
Yeah, there were about 40 women here. I counted 39, so,
Nice.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
you look
yeah.
great,
So,
and I'll see
yeah,
you soon.
I'll see you soon. Good night. Sweet dreams.